Hello, everybody, and welcome. This course is titled U.S. History, Conflict West. Now, the question is, what is the U.S. West? That's a question that popped to mind almost immediately. Is it a place, an idea, an area on a map, the people who live in the area on that map? All these questions are very valid questions, hard to actually define. Is it the American West, or where do we start in terms of the timeline? Do we start from the American period after 1776, the Declaration of Independence, or do we start when the United States is actually a country? Well, I'm going to go back a bit further because I like the ancient times. That's my jam right there, are the ancient times, because I think there's a lot of continuity into the American period, the colonial period, then the American period. And then, of course, as we move into the 19th century, that's really going to be the meat and potatoes of this course. We'll aim to provoke some of those answers in our analysis of the complexities of relationships between people of varying empires, race, ethnicity, the different ideas, and the birth of new ideas and solutions brought by conflict, love, and those imposed by a place, at least in the 19th century, far and away. Imagine yourself living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or San Francisco, California, and you are really disconnected, especially prior to the year 1869 and the Transcontinental Railroad. Washington, D.C. is almost this distant imperial power, far and away, without much communication. So, has it always been that way? And we'll explore all of that, especially when we go through our first go around here, when we look at the ancient times. And then you have, in the early colonial period, you have France, you have England, you have Spain, you sometimes have Russia in California, people coming from places from all over the world. Pretty exciting and fun to think about. So we're going to explore some of the lesser told stories outside the mainstream narrative of a normal college level U.S. history survey course. There's often times when I'm teaching U.S. history, the first half of U.S. history prior to 1877, and there's some stories that I wanted to fit into my course, but in a 16-week course, or sometimes even shorter, all the way down to 5 weeks, sometimes even 4 weeks, you don't really have enough time with all the assessments and all the things that need to take place in a course. So what I wanted to do was take those stories about the American West, about these ideas, extract them, and create a totally new course where we look at the American West from the perspective of the people who lived it, who are looking westward in their movements, but looking eastward for their laws. And then we'll examine some of the misconceptions that come out of the West because of that. We'll look at the conflicts and the resolution of those conflicts, fair or unjust as they were at the given moment, and how those were settled by United States law, which was, again, far and away an imperial power controlling thousands of miles away, people coming from thousands of miles away. You're talking about, the ultimate carpetbaggers, especially when we talk about after the Mexican-American War, where you have people coming from Washington, D.C., people bringing those ideas and implementing them on a society that was previously a Mexican territory. Now all of a sudden you have all these other added elements that are not really listed within the Constitution. And so when you look at the constitutional law of things, a lot of these individuals in the American West looked at it rather objectively. But there's subliminal messaging that happens within those laws because it's in part due to the people who are implementing those laws that really start to change and shape cultures. And there's misconceptions that happen, and those misconceptions turn sometimes into violence. sometimes turn into political movements, sometimes turn into the splitting and fracturing of communities. So we're going to explore a lot of those stories and topics that aren't necessarily explored in a mainstream U.S. history course. And there'll be a major focus, as I said, on the 19th century. What we'll also do, starting in the ancient period, is we are going to focus our study on centers of influence and power. It goes back to the idea of Washington, D.C. controlling California. So what does that mean? Well, in the case of the American West, culture, politics, and economy have often been dominated by distant centers of power, and this was true even in the ancient period. Places like Chaco and Cahokia will be our first exploration, and we'll progress with time to see how Spanish, English, French, American, Russian, sometimes Mexican governments, these different governments and their ideas being imposed from far away, sometimes even as they acted as overlords of the region, imperial overlords, they still didn't have the firm grip on places like California or Texas, and then they become their own things, their own kind of subcultures, whether that's under the Spanish crown or Mexican authority, and then eventually American authority. And then a lot of these places, specifically California, being so far away from the center of power, becomes this cultural hub of openness and liberalism, and we'll touch a little bit upon that. We'll also pay special attention to how ideas, laws, treaties, and cultures from these distant places have been applied among those in the American West. Specifically, we're talking about the U.S. Constitution, so there'll be a lot of focus on that, especially, of course, after the Mexican-American War. But even before that, when we're talking about Lewis and Clark and some of the early explorations west, the viewpoint in which Americans and others viewed the people in the American West is a rather fascinating topic. So we're going to start our journey today in the ancient world, looking at American Indian civilizations, Cahokia and Chaco being the primary centers of gravity in these two conversations, and their interactions, conflicts, rise, and fall. So until next time, bye now.